Hey, what's brappin', my fellow Nitro heads? In this video, I'm going to show you how to shim your HPI Savage diffs. Now, the two different types of shimming we're going to be focusing on today are backlash, so the play that your gears have, as well as the distance between the pinion and the ring gear. We're going to want the distance to be as centered as possible. For example, we're not going to want the pinion to be sitting all the way out here. We're not going to want it to be crashing into the diff either. We're going to want it to be as centered as possible and have just a little bit of backlash play. Having your diffs shimmed right is very crucial for any RC vehicle. The best shimming is going to allow for best performance, the most reliability, and the freest drivetrain. Having your diffs shimmed too loose is going to cause premature wear. Every time you accelerate, your ring and pinion are going to have a loose fit. So every time you accelerate, these gears are going to crash into each other, and they're not going to have the most contact. So you're pretty much just going to be destroying the end of your teeth. You're going to be stripping them out, causing premature wear, wreaking havoc on your gears. They're not going to last. Having your diffs shimmed too tight is not the best either, because you're making it very hard for your ring and pinion to move. They're going to be pressed together so tight, and it's going to cause bind in your drivetrain. Your vehicle is not going to move as free. Your engine's going to have a lot more strain on it because it's making the engine work harder to push your vehicle. The clutch is going to burn out prematurely because that's also working harder. And you're going to be, after a while, you're going to be distorting your teeth. You're going to make them sharp and pointy, and that's not good either. You should have a no-nonsense approach with shimming your diffs, as it is very important for long life, durability, best performance. Now, before you start shimming your diffs, you're going to want to have all kinds of different sizes of shims. Right here we have 0.1, 0.2, and 0.3 millimeter shims. As well as when you're shimming, you don't want to put any grease on your ring gear or on your pinion gear. You want them to be dry because the grease is going to take up some play. Because the Savage has kind of a stupid setup, I have to shim it kind of differently. So the way the Savage is, I can't just grab a shim, for example, and just simply add it, because as you can see, it just doesn't go over the output shaft here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of mock the diff up. I'll show you. So we're going to take our bearing, put it on. Then we're going to screw the ring gear onto the case using the old gasket. So we have the ring gear screwed down to the case with the used gasket. Now we're going to put on our bearings. As well as the output shafts. And this is going to be our mock diff to put into our case. We're going to put our bearings in. Going to put our pinion in. And we're going to put our outdrive cup on. Now here's where the Savage is different yet again. Instead of having a little flat on the pinion, where you put your set screw to set the distance you want, the Savage has a little hole here where the set screw is more of a cross shaft. It goes through the end of the pinion, as you can see here. Now, you can't physically set the distance with just the set screw. You have to put shims behind the pinion. Got our outdrive on, pinion in. Now we're just gonna set our mock setup in here. Now you can use the shim setup you have now, or you can just start from scratch. I have it set from scratch right now just to explain some stuff. So you know what, once these are in here, you can just kind of take these out. So you can hear how loose this is. Not good at all. And if you can see in here, the ring and pinion aren't really lined up to each other. Very well. See how there's a little bit of space? I'd like to have it pushed up like that. That is what we want. Not this, but this. So the outdrive cup needs, the pinion side needs to be shimmed inward. So we're going to put a shim on the back of the pinion. As well as we got lots of movement here. So we need to take care of that. You don't want this, because that's going to cause your ring and pinion to become meshed and unmeshed. Another thing you don't want is your pinion, or outdrive I should say, to have this play. Now once you're happy with the distance you have between your ring and pinion, but you still have this kind of play, just simply remove the outdrive cup, add a shim, reinstall your outdrive cup, and measure the play you have. Just simply put the screw back in, and simply check. There we go. Spins freely, no binding, just a little bit of play. Just a little bit like that is fine. You don't want excessive, you don't want the whole thing to be going like that. Just a little bit, that's perfect. Now I shim to where the diff spins nice and free. There's no side to side movement, and we have just a little bit of backlash, as you can see here. Have probably about, I would say, 1/2 millimeter of play. And just to double check that your diff is seated, just put the back of the cover on. So I put the back case on, and I put a couple screws in it to make sure it's seated, and I just double check. So again, it feels very nice and free. We have same amount of backlash, and we have no side-to-side movement. This is great. This is a perfectly shimmed diff. Now, just one thing I should have noted earlier is when you're using your gasket for your mock-up diff, make sure you use the same brand gasket as you plan on using when you rebuild your diff with. Personally, the reason why I like to use used diff gaskets is because I find your diff gets just the extra better seal when you use a brand new gasket for the first time. Now we can put some grease on the ring and pinion, and we can see how it feels. Alrighty, now to rebuild this diff. So to rebuild it, we have a brand new, genuine HPI gasket, brand new, genuine HPI O-rings, and we have brand new Avid bearings. We got here some red and tacky grease. You can use quite a different brands of grease, different types of grease. There's Red and Tacky. There's stuff by Fast Eddie that's like really good stuff. You can use the high pressure black grease that TLR uses. You can use moly grease. You can use graphite grease. Graphite grease is probably one of the most ideal greases you can use because it's not gonna sling off as much. The cheaper grease you use, the more it's gonna sling off. The better quality grease you use, the least likely it's gonna sling off. You can use marine grease if you drive through lots of puddles or ponds or whatnot. So for today, I'm gonna use Red and Tacky. Just gonna put a little bit here on the pinion. I'm satisfied with that. Now we want to put some grease on this ring gear right here, but we don't want to put too much. So notice how I'm putting it on. I'm putting my finger on an angle and I'm pushing it. That's my idea, is to pressurize the grease into the gear. Just a little more here. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just gonna snap this down in there. Gonna put our lid on again. See how long it takes me to put this one on. There we go. And you can hear how much quieter it is. There's gonna be a little bit of resistance now because there's grease on it. And you can see the grease takes up a little play. That's why you want, personally, I leave my diffs slightly on the loose side because once you put grease on, it's going to take up some play. So as you can see here, there's just a little bit there. The grease took up quite a bit of that play. So there we go. That's how I shim my diffs on my HPI Savage. Don't forget to Loctite this set screw right here. These come loose pretty easily.